minister of this country, I do not advise myself on matters of law. And as I take a position on this matter in Tobago and Tobago's problem, you can rest assured that I have had some legal advice. You don't have to agree with the advice. I don't have to agree with it, but it exists. And as leader of a business, of running a country, a decision is made against that advice. People go to court and they're sure they'll win the case. But I'm not going to argue this case in court, I could tell you. It's going to be argued by the lawyers for the state, if we ever get there. But I am not acting capriciously. What I did do, I looked on at how you all attempted to find a way out of the current situation. And when it came to the point where I was satisfied that Tobago's administration was deadlocked and could remain so for an inordinate period of time, that was my call to first find another option which is available and also to talk to you. As of last night, when the Parliament met and took a vote, another option has become available, and that is the option, probably the preferred option of the government, but it exists now, which it didn't exist a day ago. The Parliament has passed an amendment to the THA Act, which is available in the event that it becomes useful. I have seen it said, do this, do that, do. For example, one person yesterday in the Parliament said, let's have a caretaker government. That sounds good, sounds sensible. But how? By what authority is this caretaker government going to be born? Who will be the authorizer of the caretaker government? I also saw the Tobago senator saying the 12 people should get together and come up with a decision. Well, if you could do that, that would be wonderful. But I've seen you getting together on more than one occasion, and you have not come up with anything earth-shattering. You have not come up with anything at all. The bottom line is, we are all constrained by the law. Because if I do anything that is not lawful, any citizen, especially those with interests and agendas, could go to the court and complain about what the government has done or what the Prime Minister has done. So we are all constrained by the law. So if we are talking about any solution to this problem, which is a legal thing, because the Assembly is a legal entity which operates under the law, in this case, the Tobago House of Assembly Act and the country's constitution. If any of us do anything that is not authorized by the law, that is when we will be acting capriciously. I know that there are differences of opinion as to what the law says should happen in this situation. But please excuse me if I take the advice that I got, that this is what the law permits. I've heard it said that the law doesn't permit that and the law permits something else. Well, if that is to be adjudicated upon outside of these borders, I've seen it that some people say they'll go to court. I have not seen the writs yet, but it may very well come to that, I don't know. But in the meantime, an unusual situation is authorized by the law. And that unusual situation is this, that until such time as a new assembly is instituted, those who were there before the election result will remain in place. That is the law. Doesn't matter if you like the person, doesn't matter how much you figure they're thief, doesn't matter if you figure they're lazy or they're worthless. The law says they remain there until the new election results generate a new assembly. That is normal around the world. As a matter of fact, sometimes this goes on for months. While in a country where the chief executive is a president, the president waits for them to sort something out, or the president have appointed somebody and said, form a government. And if that person cannot pull together enough people to form a government, sometimes they end up accepting a minority government, knowing that the government is temporary That is as close as you come to a caretaker government. A prime minister is appointed, he doesn't have a majority, he goes to the parliament, and sometimes immediately there's a vote of no confidence and the government falls immediately. Sometimes a minority party might say, okay, I'll support the government for a while or on an issue to allow the government to do certain things, but you're going back to the polls. That is normal. I've seen my colleagues in the parliament making legal arguments that, oh, no, you can't do that because people were elected and they have a salary to get absolute rubbish, right? If you are elected and the circumstances does not result in an institution being put in place, and it has to be terminated for a restart, that is normal. And I would love to hear the arguments in court against that. And it happens in Commonwealth democracies and non-Commonwealth democracies, standard practice. This morning, given the limited time that we have, and given the unusual opportunity I have to sit in this room with you all, and to hear your point of view, I would like at this point to simply ask you all, how do you propose to have an institution that started in Tobago? How do you propose to get the assembly to be instituted? Because if you don't have an answer for that, the answer that exists now will continue. Meaning that the chief secretary who is there and the handful of people from the last administration will remain there until that question is answered. Doesn't matter how you feel about that. Because so remember, if we don't have an answer as to how to do it differently to have the new assembly in place, what exists now is going to continue. So I will open the floor to the leaders of both groups and others after. Don't be shy, you know. I've been in St. Anne's in Trinidad, and I've been hearing so much coming from Tobago. There was so much being said. This is your time to speak. If you want, don't be shy, because if you don't speak now, when I leave here, I'm sure I'm going to be hearing what is being said here, and somebody else will speak for you, or you speak for yourself. Now is the time. Now is a good time, if I may advise. Now is a good time to speak on the subject.
I will be very brief, and to start the discussion to say that you have indicated that you have been following what has been happening in Tobago with regards to the two sides trying to resolve the situation that we currently face. But I just want to put on record in this meeting today that our position basically remains the same, and that is where we are supporting the amendments to the Tobago House of Assemblies Act, because after we have perused the Tobago House of Assemblies Act, we recognize that there are, of course, flaws, and there are clauses that have not been inserted to treat with situations like these that we face. And so all legal advice and opposition is that we support the amendments to the Tobago House of Assemblies Act, and that is our position at this point in time.
But may I ask before you leave, sometimes you may have a position, but in these matters, it's a question of options. Were there any other option put to you on which you may have a position either for or against? Was there any other option other than that option that you're familiar with?
There has been other discussions. I have had some discussions with legal minds and even persons on the street asking the question about having another elections so soon when we have the Tobago House of Assemblies, the Tobago House of Assemblies, the position in Parliament at this point in time for debate. And some have said that it is likely for that paper, the bill, the autonomy bill for Tobago, to be brought to the Parliament this year to be debated. I know that it is somewhere in the joint select committee stage, and so we have been advocating for that position to come forward as soon as is possible. Some have said, as I said in some discussions that we have had, perhaps we should now lobby for that document to be advanced, to be escalated, and be brought to the Parliament for immediate discussion and approval by both sides. That would be, of course, the UNC and the People's National Movement. And let that be the document that will trigger the next Tobago House of Assembly's election. So apart from the position that we have now, which is to have amendments, there are other positions that says, let us push to have the Tobago's autonomy bill brought forward and discuss, and let that be the one to trigger the Tobago House of Assembly's election.
Mr. Prime Minister, indeed, we're happy you came to Tobago and you came in a capacity as the Prime Minister. Indeed, Tobago has taken note of your presence this morning and this meeting and the seriousness of it. Allow me to ask a preamble question. Would this tape be available?
Sure.
Right, good recording. Because we want to go on record as saying the people of Tobago demands leadership, and they demand leadership now. We have been going to the hills, the valleys, the nooks and the crannies, the rivers and the ravines to elicit their comment on the state of operation within the THA. One of the view that is being espoused by the people, and it's the second most popular view, I will rate 2, is the view of a government of inclusion, which is an amalgamation between the People's National Movement and the Progressive Democratic Patriots. We believe on this side, which is the side of the Progressive Democratic Patriots, that we are mature enough to engage your side, and I refer to your side, speaking to your side as you in the capacity of political leader of the PNM, on such a discussion. If such would find favor, then perhaps we could have a discussion among ourselves here and see what it looks like. And that could be an option. We could walk away from here being very happy, saying, okay, we have now a government of inclusion, one that would consist of both political parties, thus lessening the political rift that divide the common people of Tobago. That is a very favorable position out there. And I will want that position to perhaps be considered first before I place the other position on the table.
The Tobago, this PNM grouping would have come out with Tobago Island Council. Have you all made any effort to bring about what you have just suggested, which is some kind of a cooperation between the PDP and the PNM? Was that part of the discussions that you had? Has that ever been discussed?
Mr. Prime Minister, it's very interesting you have asked that question. We respect your leadership, sir, as the political leader of the PNM. The PNM does not operate in part, but as a whole, and now that we have you here, we think this is the most fitting moment to create that discussion. Would you allow such a discussion this morning?
Thank you very much, Mr. Duke, but I should tell you that in the PNM, the Tobago Island Council has total autonomy. That discussion would give credence to the allegation that I'm a dictator. And I'm certainly not looking forward to that label being burnished. So I would think that if that is to be considered, it has to come from the PNM, what you call the PNM Tobago, the Island Council, because the Island Council is completely autonomous. So I don't know that maybe since the leader of the Island Council
Precisely,
is here,
I was wondering that if
the leader is here,
we are in a position to so discuss that now, or we have to wait for another meeting.
I wouldn't say discuss it now. I would say comment on it now.
It has been about 1 month and 2 weeks thereabout since we have been trying to come to a resolution on this particular matter. And we have had several sit-ins, or several meetings rather, in the House with a view to attempting to try to resolve this particular issue. And for the both sides, we have not been able to even come together to determine how we will approach the next set of meetings. And so for me, at this point in time, we have not been approached by the PDP. We have attempted in some instances to reach out to determine a number of different things. And so at this point, we are open to discussing resolving the matter. But again, our position remains one where we are very much prepared to return to the polls. And as far as we are concerned, that is the most democratic position at this point in time.
But the more salient question was whether there is any consideration to be given to some sharing of responsibilities, even for a while, so as to advance to another position. Is that something that you would want to lead the Island Council to?
Well, it is something that would have to be discussed at this point. Perhaps we can start some discussions from the side of the PNM and from the side of the PDP to hear what the idea of this coalition is all about. But if we are to pay close attention to what has happened, perhaps nationally and even internationally, we have seen quite a lot of situations where coalition governments have not worked. And so if it is that the PDP is open to some form of discussion and advancing their own ideas, we will listen at this point.
Okay. Is there any other comment on the question I asked? How do we get an assembly installed and constituted? It may be that there's some more things that should be put on the table, and it will clarify any pathway that you may move towards. The letter of invitation spoke about talking about getting this 6-6 and an assembly installed. And the second part of the invitation was dealing with the self-government, the progress of the self-government. I want to draw to your attention a couple of facts. One is that if we don't do anything, and by we here, I'm including the government, if nothing is done, option one is that what exists now will have to continue. And I don't think anybody wants that as the option. What exists now is not a proper arrangement. It is certainly meant only as a holdover in the shortest possible time until. But if nothing is done, this unacceptable arrangement, which is the only lawful arrangement, will continue or will have to continue. And I don't think anybody wants that to be the outcome. The other one is, if we go by way of the amendment to the THA Act, which the Parliament passed last night, which by its very nature, the solution is going back to the polls, seeking to ask the same electorate that voted to vote again, and to see whether that exercise will generate a majority and a minority. An election being initiated in that way would take a few months. By a few, I mean probably 4 to 5 to 6 months to get done. Because by the time to do that, if the suggestion is to have that done, as the government side is thinking it is, it will involve the Election and Boundaries Commission putting a report to the Parliament. and then the Parliament adjudicating on that EBC report. And only then, if the Parliament accepts that report, can an election be called. And an election being called with by the call alone, we'll be talking about 6 to 8 weeks. That's 2 months. If you work that out from now, you will see we're talking about April, May, June. What you may not have observed is that the Parliament, before this election result came out, and before the outcome was known to any of us, and before the difficulty of the outcome was in front of us, the ongoing work of the Joint Select Committee was underway and is underway in the Parliament. And there has been a saving. And if you give me a moment, I will take you through where that has gone and where we're at. But the end result is the Parliament has given that committee until May to report. So if whatever we do here results in an election, it's going to fall about the same time as the committee is due to report. And I want you to take that into account. Because if we proceed with what the Parliament passed last night, giving you that option, giving the country that option, which is where my responsibility came in. If that option is utilized, it's an election. And then if we get support for the passage of the work of the JSC, because that is not a given, eh? That is something that requires a special majority, and that is not a given. And those of you who followed the debate last night in the Parliament and would have heard the position of the opposition and the independents would know that what is in the JSC is not a given. Self-government for Tobago, further self-government for Tobago, as desirable as it is for Tobagonians, is a matter for Trinidad and Tobago. And if those who speak for the Trinidad side are not in agreement with what those who speak for the Tobago side wants, the passage of an acceptable outcome to the JSC is not a given. But assuming that it is to be passed, where the committee reports by May, because May is the outer limit, then you're talking about another election. Because what is in the JSC automatically calls for returning to the Parliament for 2 amendments. One of the Constitution, and the other of the THA Act, another THA Act. Because what is to be given to Tobago is not in the current THA Act, and therefore you'll have to go back to the Parliament and put it in place. So the JSC work spells out election. The passage of last night of the amendment spells out election. Question is, do you want 2 elections roughly 3 months apart? Or do you focus on the bigger prize and not utilize the smaller prize? The smaller prize is the passage of the amendment last night to allow a deadlock by an election that is simply meant to break the deadlock, or an election that brings the changes that Tobago has worked on for the last few years. Let me just take you through. I know that many of you, most of you I should say, would not have been familiar with what has happened in the Parliament. And just to allow your mind to be clear on what I've just said, let me just take you to this parliamentary brief that I've come here with, just to make sure that when you leave here today and you talk about the JSC, that you would be properly informed. This document I'm going to quote from is a summary in the 5th session of the 11th Parliament, 2019-2020, a House paper here. And it says, pursuant to the resolution of the House, on Friday, March 9th, 2018, in the House, and in the Senate, March 13, 2018, a joint select committee was established, and it was established to consider and report on the Constitution Amendment Tobago Self-Government Bill 2018 and to report by July 31st, 2018. And the committee was a 12-man committee, of which 7 were PNM members, the other 5 were non-PNM members, non-government, 3 of whom were UNC and 2 were independents. And I should tell you who they are. The chairman is Camille Robinson Regis, and the other members are Terence Dale Singh, Shamfa Kojo, Fitzgerald Hines, Foster Cummins, Nigel De Freitas from the PNM. The opposition members are Rudranath Indar Singh, Saddam Hussein, and who's the other one? Ramona Ramdial. And the independents were Stephen Crease and Danisha Mahabir. Crease and Mahabir have been replaced by new independent senators. And that committee had a series of meetings, and with respect to work done, to get work done, the committee was joined by the Chief Parliamentary Council, the PS Secretariat, Ministry of the Attorney General and Legal Affairs, and the Law Reform Commission. That was the working group. And of course, written submissions and comments on the Constitution Amendment and the Tobago Act 2018 were requested via print media, as well as on the Parliament channel and on the Parliament social media platform with a deadline of April 30th, 2018. Also, the Parliament brought in experts in this matter of self-governance. One came from the UNDP, a policy specialist, and another one came from the United Nations Department of Political Affairs, and they worked with the committee. And of course, there was a meeting in Tobago on the 10th of June, 2018, where the general public was allowed to address the bill. The committee agreed that due to the number of submissions received from stakeholders and members of the public, the submissions will be tabulated by clauses to facilitate proper examination and submissions. The committee also brought in Mr. Delano Bart, a QC, former Attorney General of St. Kitts Nevis. And that was specifically because St. Kitts Nevis is one of the existing self-governing arrangements in the Commonwealth Caribbean, where Nevis has full self-governance in the territory of St. Christopher and Nevis. And of course, by the time we get to the 11th Parliament, the committee was established in the 4th session, and all along, I've heard it said that we have left this thing to gather cobweb and died in the Parliament. No, sir. All along, the work of the committee has always been adopted and continued in consideration of the work, so no work was lost. Anytime the Parliament had to, when the deadlines were reached and the Parliament went to another session, the work of the committee was saved and the committee was allowed to legally adopt the positions of the previous committee. By the 4th session, at a sitting of the Senate on Tuesday, November 7th, Senator Dillon replaced Mr. Crease and Foster Cummings was replaced by somebody else. And of course, the Secretariat and technical support for this work in the Parliament, Jackie Sampson, the clerk of the House, was the secretary to the committee. Kiba Jacob, the procedural clerk, was the assistant secretary. And there were 3 researchers, graduate research, public procurement manager, and project manager assigned to the committee. And they also continued to have a series of meetings on this matter. The committee reported to the House that it was not able to conclude its clause-by-clause examination of the bill. Additional time was required by the committee to continue and complete its in-depth review of the bill to compile proposed amendments. As such, the committee was unable to support its final report by the deadline of September 27, 2019. September 27, 2019. Bear in mind that by January 2020, we were into COVID. And 2020 pretty much saw the Parliament functioning at half speed. However, the 5th session of the 11th Parliament, a similar committee be appointed to complete the work begun by this committee, and this new committee be empowered to adopt as part of its records the work done to date. So that is where we're at. And by the time we get to the fifth session, at the first meeting held on Friday, November 8th, 2019, the committee agreed to consider the policy areas contained in the bill. Having adopted a significant amount of work done during the last session, the committee narrowed its focus on the following key policy areas. 1, the division of powers between the state of Trinidad and Tobago and the island of Tobago. 2, the Tobago legislature. 3, the Tobago Service Commission and Civil Service. 4, a dispute resolution solution. And 5, the financial positions. I tell you these 5 things because these are the major policy issues that will be addressed by any joint select committee making changes for Tobago. And therefore, when we talk about going to conclude the joint select committee, I want you to grasp that they are weighty matters, not just a matter of how many seats you should have in the assembly or whether you should go back to the polls or not. These 5 matters, this is the kernel of what, and the committee has reached the stage now where these matters are being addressed. As a matter of fact, as you know, those of you who have been familiar or who pay attention to the parliament, you know committee work cannot be dealt with outside of the committee. That's a breach of privilege. Unless the committee reports to the parliament, the committee discussions cannot be brought into the public domain. So I can say, I am not a member of the committee, so I do not know any of the committee work beyond that. I just tell you this, that the committee is there. In this stage, with a deadline of May, I understand from the committee that they are scheduled to do one more meeting in Tobago sometime in the not too distant future. And also that the committee is in a position to report to the parliament sometime within the deadline that they've asked for. Meaning that if we look at the committee's conclusion, we could reasonably say that the committee could conclude its work by mid-year, which is in the same ballpark of any election arising out of the amendment to the THA Act that the government has sponsored in the parliament. So these are 2 options available to you here in Tobago, you 12 people. 2 options available to you. 1 is to proceed along the line of the amendment to the THA Act, which has been done. It has been done so that that tool, that option is available now. And 2, whether you wait, work with, encourage the conclusion of the Joint Select Committee. I'll tell you though, giving you the benefit of my experience, I happen to be the most experienced person in the parliament. You could disregard my experience. You could insult me. You could dismiss me if you wish. But I'll give you the benefit of my experience with a warning that the opportunity to get the Joint Select Committee to report to the parliament in a way that gives Tobago a sound. We're probably not going to get all that you've asked for. Nobody gets all that you ask for in any negotiation. Sure, Mr. Duke knows that. But to give Tobago a significant advance in this subject of Joint Select Committee and internal self-government, this might be your only chance. Because that desire for further authority, for further share of the public pie, for further executive authority in Tobago is not shared by every political entity in Trinidad and Tobago. You will not believe me, but I could tell you I'm not a betting man. But if I had to place a wager, this might be your only chance to get the best deal. Because you see, as it stands now, the country is paying attention. Tobago is paying attention. And what might have happened here with this 6-6? It has been said that out of evil cometh good. It might very well be. That is what the good is. So, as an outsider, I just hold out to you. You have two options. You have to choose. But I have one duty, and that duty is to ensure that Tobago has a functioning administration in the shortest possible time. As Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago, I cannot and I will not sit and allow Tobago to drift without a functioning assembly. So therefore, I don't choose the option of doing nothing and letting what exists now continue. I and the government that I lead will not choose that option. If that is the option that we are faced with, then the option of going to the parliament, as we've done, and the option of proclaiming that act, as we will do, changing the law as we will, and going to the polls as we will, that is what is going to happen. But I would like that to be an option that you know about and that you consider. And if you dismiss it, I hope if you dismiss it with something that is usable, something that is doable, something that is lawful. And of course, if you also want to consider that we together anxiously await and bring forward and fight for and defend this option of the bringing forward of the work of the Joint Select Committee to conclusion by May of this year, which is its outline date. Because I'll tell you something, if the committee doesn't bring a report to the Parliament by May, it wouldn't be the first time that there's a committee where work dies in. There's going to be a lot of finger pointing, a lot of blame showing, a lot of insults. But that ain't going to be worth nothing, because the outcome would have been nothing. And it would be a tragedy indeed if that is the outcome. As head of a government in the Parliament, I give you the assurance that I'll do everything and we'll do everything possible for that not to happen. But the government that I lead we have 22 seats in the Parliament. 22 seats cannot change the Constitution to do the things that this committee is advancing. So let's understand that one time. And those who are outside of the Parliament, you have no vote in the Parliament, and therefore you too will not be able to add to the 22 seats. This requires the support of government, opposition, and independent senators, because we have a bicameral parliament. We have a parliament which is a House of Representatives and a Senate. Any change for or against, long or short, requires the full parliament. And I want you to understand that. And it is only those who are in the parliament who will be adjudicating on this matter, where the adjudication is really a vote in the parliament. All the talking on the outside, and some of it is quite disturbing. In recent times, you would have heard persons in authority talking about what is the cost per head of running Tobago. How much Tobago should get cost per head. You would have heard the ridiculous comparisons of Tobago with Mayaro and Tabaquita and Pinal and Diego Martin. And I say it for the umpteenth time, there's no country called Tobago and Mayaro and Tobago and Tabaquita and Tobago and Diego Martin. There's a country called Trinidad and Tobago, in which those locations that they mention are part of the Trinidad, and the other part is Tobago. And the only people who are so far taking that seriously are the Tobagonians and Tobago's Voice and the PNM in Trinidad. I'm saying to you, I've heard it said last night from brilliant senators, why Tobago should have 15 seats. As a matter of fact, somebody who one should suggest, why not 11? Meaning what? Drop one of the seats that we have now. And how do you do that? The very thing that they argued about, which is don't bring the EBC into this because it will involve gerrymandering. Once you're making any change of any boundary, whether it's to go to 11 or 11, you have to do the EBC. Because the only reason why the EBC is mentioned and brought into this is because existing laws tell the EBC what the EBC should do. I heard it argued last night in the parliament by those who claim to be parliamentarians that the parliament cannot tell the EBC what to do. The laws that the EBC are instructed by now were passed by the parliament telling the EBC what to do. You can't, after you tell the EBC what to do, you can't go and get it done and tell them how to do it. But in terms of what they do, the parliament, which is the lawmaking authority in this country, tells the parliament. So the parliament tells the EBC now and instructs the EBC by the existing law passed in the parliament when the EBC should put a report into the parliament on its work with respect to local government, Tobago House of Assembly, or general election. As under the existing law, the EBC, having just come out of an election and have put a report in the parliament last, I think it was October, November, the next report that the EBC is told to present to the parliament on Tobago is 2 years from today. So even if we agree to go back to the polls, as per the amendment that was passed in the parliament last night, if we don't amend the EBC Act to put in the amendment that the EBC will put a report inside of 2 years, we have to sit here and wait for 2 years for the EBC report to be put in the normal scheme of things. And if that report doesn't come to the parliament, the process for calling and executing an election is not available. And if you're giving me advice that, okay, let's go with 11 seats, 15 is too much, such a person who is making that argument is doing it in a barrel that does not take into account what I've just mentioned there to you. Those 5 policy positions are meant to give Tobago expanded executive authority. And who says that you can do that properly with less than 15 people? Who said that 15 people is the size of the assembly to deal with an assembly that has been given more powers? It is you to go in and say that. You said that here in Tobago long before many of you were in politics. Long before the result of 6-6 came about. You said that given the powers we are asking for and which we expect you to give us, and the executive responsibilities that will flow from that, a 15-seat assembly is about the minimum that we need to administer Tobago. People who have not read a line of your submission, who have not listened to a minute of what is going on, are giving you advice as to what is good for you. In other words, ignorance is bliss, and they're giving you sublime advice of ignorance. It is sometimes quite annoying, when they jump out in front of the radio and television as experts, right? Go-to people telling you what to do. And the simple thing, they have not read the bill. They have not read the amendment. They have not read anything. And they bring to the discussion, no, if you ask many of them, show me Nevis on a map. Tell me when Nevis became self-governing. Tell me what applies in Nevis as a self-governing entity. Tell me how Anguilla left Barbuda and Antigua. What is happening in Anguilla? They don't know. And if there's one thing that irritates me in this country, is that the national conversation is driven by people who don't take time to learn it and then come and educate you and you inculcate and learn anything from them. The most you can learn from them is political spite, insult, racialism, corruption, and dotishness from many of them. And I don't feel proud saying that because it's my country. You go to Barbados and you read the newspapers, you could be educated by reading the papers. In Trinidad and Tobago, A whole set of commentators, very few of them worthy of any of your time. So, fellow Tobagonians, I don't know how you view me, but I know how I view you. And you have a responsibility to be sensible, and you must know how far to go and how far you can go. And we are all constrained by law, and we all have a common birthright. So, you could insult me if you wish. You could badmouth me if you wish. But while you're doing that, I'm still the Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago. And I'm here this morning in the capacity of Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago. And there's a problem in Tobago, and that is my problem. If on my way to Trinidad you all fix it, then I'm happy. If you all were able to fix this, I wouldn't be here this morning. I'd be down my road. I'd be somewhere in Diego Martin. I wouldn't be here. If you are able to fix it, then fix it. The one thing you cannot say is that I came into your affairs and tried to tell you how to fix it. I said, I leave it up to you to see whether you can come out of this situation of even. The Assembly is have a majority and a minority. Who is the minority? Which of you will stand up and say, I'm the minority in a 6-6 situation? And which of you will assume the role of majority, self-appointed? One senior counsel said, the PLM must leave office in Tobago. Why? Because they're fed up with the PLM. Well, let me tell you all something. The PLM makes no apology for having run this country for 25 years unbroken. And we make no apology for having run the THA for how long? 20 years? Because we never stole an election in Tobago. In every election, I was here in 1988. I ran the THA PNM campaign in 1988. Went to the Tobagonians. We got one seat. And we got that one seat by the last polling division in Mount Pleasant, when William Mackenzie won that seat. How many times did the PLM come into the Assembly at its opening with one seat in the Assembly? So those who want to cast aspersion on the PLM now, right? You're on your own with that, because we are not fazed by that at all. We are about service, and we serve from every quarter. We were here with 12 seats in the Assembly, and Tobago progressed. And if today you are assemblymen and assemblywomen, be careful who you're taking advice from.
You are convening a meeting of the Assemblymen, not the Tobago House of Assembly, but a meeting of the Assemblymen. As such, you are the chairman of this meeting, and all meeting would have a certain legality to it. You claim that there are two positions placed for us to consider. I heard 3 positions. The position I gave, which is we can form a government in Tobago, the House of Assembly, that both of us are occupants of the executive, both groups, amalgamation. It seems not to find favor with the Tobago Council political leader. And so she almost dismissed the idea and went speedy on to say she's ready for the amendments. We are in no rush, because you cannot starve the horse while the grass is growing. While these amendments are yet to be made law, while they are yet to be challenged in a court of law, while we are still to see the preface of the preamble of the Constitutional Amendment Tobago House of Assembly Amendment Bill, while we are yet to see that these horses are starving, my position to you, I wish to reassert, is that we are all here today, and if needs be, the conversation can begin here today, where we can make a preliminary discussion and perhaps a decision, if it's favorable to us, as to creating a Tobago House of Assembly executive that will guide Tobago through this, I would say, obscure period, until whatever amendments, whatever laws are properly cemented in the annals of our history and are ready to be carried forward. we are anticipating what could perhaps happen, what we have now. And now, all 6 PDP assemblymen, all 6 assemblymen stand ready and willing for Tobago and the entire country and Tobago to say, look, let's solve this. If you need a presiding officer, who you have? Okay, we agree to that presiding officer. Who you have for chief secretary? Okay. Who we have? And he said, okay, let's agree to that. Let's go. Let's go down the line. But there's a lot of grandstanding on that side. And I'm asking myself, is this a setup where we are just faced with 2 options? Because there's a full option that says how we govern now until that option is obtained. And we would like to anticipate the future with certainty. But even the weathermen with all the instruments fail at times. What we know we have is now, and Tobagonians are ready for that type of collective governance, that kind of a governance that brings about healing and respect and love. And I'm saying we too in the PDP, we are ready for it, Mr. Prime Minister. I know, based on your love and your passion that I've seen demonstrated here, you too are ready for that. If the other side is willing to so subject themselves. So we are ready for the discussion even now.
I started off by saying that we are constrained by the existing law. The Tobago House of Assembly is governed by a law that requires a majority leader and a minority leader. Whether, I don't know that we can run an executive or establish an executive without complying with that law. I'm not naive, and I'm sure you're not. The question that really is for you to grasp, or out of your grasp, whatever you might call it, is how do you get to comply with the law of having a majority identified and a minority identified? And if it is that what you are saying is that you want to discuss that with the PNM, I am saying that that is for you all to discuss. You all are here for a whole month. It's a month? How long you all been here? And let me go back to what I said on the morning after the election. I said I am leaving it up to the Tobagonians because I really couldn't do otherwise. I had no local standard in it. You may not believe me when I say that in the PNM, we leave the Island Council to run the PNM Tobago affairs. And if it is that you all want to talk about some arrangement, I would not stand in the way, and I can't stand in the way. However, what I will not do is sit in Trinidad as Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago and watch Tobago not have a functioning Tobago House of Assembly. I'm not sending you all to talk, but I hope that if you all want to talk, that you all can talk to one another. If you want time to talk, 10 minutes? 10 minutes? Who to talk to whom? To your people or to the PNM? To talk to the PNM? Well, if you all, I am just pro temp chairman. If you all want to talk, I will step aside and let you all go in a room and talk somewhere. Do you all want to talk? The minority leader wants to talk to the PNM. I will adjourn this. You all go and, you don't have a lot of time, eh? But I think you all should go and talk. I think if it is that, I'm asking, it was said I should have come here before, long before. I can now say, you all could have talked before. But since you are indicating that you want to talk to the leader of the PNM, then I will adjourn this. We're almost close to the allotted time. I will adjourn it for 15 minutes, and you all go and talk. Come back and tell us what you talk about. We've had some conversation. Is there anything you want to tell me, Mr. Duke?
Mr. Prime Minister, I'm happy to report to you that the 12 assemblymen, in particular, the leaders, etc., would have met, and we discussed the option of having an interim governance model in place that speaks of amalgamation of both teams, where the both teams will come like one. And we on the PDP side, we were humble to put to the PNM side to say to them that we will support your pick for presiding officer. We will support your pick for chief secretary. But we in turn want you to support our pick for deputy chief secretary and for finance secretary. And the other secretaries' positions will be shared or even divided in a manner that all will be able to govern. We see this self-governing team as a step in the right direction for Tobago, as we will now be able to work with Trinidad on the constitutional amendment Tobago House of Assembly bill. And we would prefer, we the PDP prefer to wait until that comes, because that is what Tobago has been longing for. We have been hearing them, and the accolades obviously will go to the PNM party
Thank you very
for
much.
bringing it in. As if you accept it, but I'm not sure if you all will accept it, because I'm hearing your side like they're not accustomed to good treatment. They are whining and they're saying they will take a week to think about it, and such a decision I know could be solved in one day. They say when you see something, you go for it one time. You do not delay. I would say take it now.
An idea was put forward by the leader of the PDP and given support by the deputy political leader. But we have indicated that we came here to hear of your submissions as the Prime Minister, because you would have called this meeting to tell us what are your thoughts as the Prime Minister of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago. And because we are operating within a formal organization and we did not want to dismiss the option put forward by the PDP, we have indicated that they should issue to us a proposal that we will take into consideration. Of course, looking at the merits and demerits and how it fits into the Tobago House of Assembly Act, because of course we're treating with a very formal body. And that is where that is where we ended those discussions basically. So the PDP will submit a position that we will take into consideration, and then more later we will determine when we respond back to them on that proposal.
I think this is a good note to end on, because what I have been told, and if I'm wrong, please correct me, somebody. We started out here this morning with the electees from two political parties, the PDP and the PNM. With the PNM being in office as a residue of the last administration and a deadlock situation. I ask you, how do we get an assembly constituted? A proposal was made, and I'm hearing that the proposal made and the little talk that you all have, that you've opened the door to talking to one another. And let me just say something to you all. You see, this political arena is not a place to make enemies. And you could make a lot of friends in there. Take my word for it. I've been there. This year, I came into the political arena in if I dismiss my earlier outings, but with the PNM, 1974. So that would make it 46 years I've been involved, which is a lot longer than many of you have been born. I've been in the parliament for decades. I've had the exposure in opposition. I spent 4 terms in opposition. 4. And I can also tell you the best election campaign I've ever had was the first one I took part in Tobago when I didn't win, 1981. You as an individual, don't set out to make enemies in the political arena. Let it be. And you probably will find that you would make some friends. And as Tobagonians, right, we should be the last to operate on the basis of enmity and insult. You can disagree. And you must disagree from time to time, as you do at home in your house with your spouse and your children. You could disagree. But don't be disagreeable and insulting. If I disagree with you, I disagree. And you could, I have an uncle who used to always say, there's no law in this country to make me say yes when I say no. Right? If you can't persuade me, then you have to accept that you can't persuade me. But it doesn't look good when in this little community that is so proud, and we are so proud of ourselves and our island, that we denigrate one another. If we don't agree, okay, we don't agree. Politics is about proposals and options, always. And of course, you call it win and lose. I call it selection and deselection. Because what in the end, what it's all about is that you offer yourself for public office. And sometimes you're chosen, sometimes you're not. Sometimes you're riding high in the thing, not knowing that within a matter of 2 weeks, you could be down in the fall, taking a fall. And another thing too I want to advise you youngsters about, don't fall in love with office. Don't fall in love with office. Whenever you are elected or selected or appointed to office, it usually carries a term with it. I could tell you that, you know. You know why I could tell you that? When I was in government, first time, 1991, Prime Minister called a snap election. I go on the way, the election, we lost it. I come out and I fight. We lose the election. I go home and I go to bed, have a shower, go to bed, and I sleep late and wake up next morning. And as far as I'm concerned, somebody else was going to go and do the job that I was doing. But I stayed in the political arena, came back and fought again, right? Prime Minister do the same thing again. Lost the election. Get up in the morning. But once you behave as though something there in your board paper as your birthright, and somebody leave it in a will for you, you're going to behave badly. And you're going to end up badly. Office is an opportunity, is a privilege, and deserves to be respected. And because somebody is not on your side, don't mean that you should disrespect them. Sometimes they really provoke you sometimes, right? But I could tell you I've made a lot of friends in the politics of Trinidad and Tobago. Quite a few of them not in the PNM. You may not believe that. But how do you think when I became Prime Minister of this country, I could have appointed a former UNC MP as the chairman of NP? How do you think I could have done that? It's because when we were parliamentarians, the respect was there between both of us. And when he left the parliament, I knew him as a citizen where I could put the character responsibility in my government. Because chairman of NP is a piece of the government you run in there. Right? And by the same token, appointed chairman of TSTT. He was one time a leader of the ONR or the NR or something like that. Right? I remember when I was in parliament the first time as a senator, 33-3, Pam Nicholson was the MP for Tobago West, I think it was. And 33-3. And one of the guys on her side said something to me when we gathered together in the joint chamber for the opening of the parliament. One of the guys, who I shall remain nameless, said something to me across the floor that wasn't very pleasant. And I heard this voice say, "Leave him." It was Pam Nicholson talking to her colleague to leave me alone. Because as far as she was concerned, she was looking out for me. And you all are young people. There's a lot of things to do and to happen in Tobago. You all are starting out in the politics, some of you. Some of you had a little opening before. I wish you all well. I wish you all well. I'm proud of all of you. All of you. Because you... You know, Menachem Begin blew up the King David Hotel, right? And then went on to become the Prime Minister of Israel. So there's hope for you. Anyway, I just think that it's an era which even though economically things are difficult, it doesn't always stay like that. And we are required now to do whatever has to be done in this period. We can't change the period. This is what it is. This is what it is. And people are unreasonable. And you have to deal with that. If you can't do that, you're in the wrong business. So I would leave you all to talk again. Today I allowed you to speak in front of a camera. But I'm sure the discussion that you all are going to have are not discussions that are to take place in front of cameras. And as long as you all respect each other, because I know you all want Tobago to do well. I know you all love Tobago, your families are here, your future is here. Talk to one another. The campaign is over for the moment. You're going to do something else. Do it well. There's going to be another election coming up soon. But I want to ask you all for one thing. For me, I'm not involved in this business of what you do in the assembly. And believe me, I don't run the PNM in Tobago. I'm responsible at the national level for the PNM in Tobago. But they have to run their show. But I am going back to Trinidad this weekend. And the issue in front of me is what is going to happen to Tobago. That Joint Select Committee, when it concludes its work, where the PNM is in the majority, we have 7 seats in the committee. When that committee is to report, the PNM is going to report in Tobago's interest. The PNM is going to come back to the parliament with 22 seats to give Tobago what is reasonable, what the international experts, the regional experts, the local experts. I mean, I don't know if you all are familiar how wide that discussion has been, because you might have been too focused on Tobago. The committee received written submissions from the Tobago House of Assembly. Those were the bills, right? The Association of Real Estate Agents, the Bankers Association of Trinidad and Tobago, the Ministry of Finance Inland Revenue Division, the Central Bank of Trinidad and Tobago, the Election and Boundaries Commission, the Ministry of Finance, Office of Permanent Secretary, the Movement for Transformation, the Personnel Department, the Ministry of Public Administration and Communication Legal Services Division, the Environmental Management Authority, the Ministry of Planning and Development Office of Permanent Secretary, the National Joint Action Committee, the Port Authority of Trinidad and Tobago, the Public Service Association, Sir Arthur Lewis Institute of Social and Economic Studies, the University of the West Indies, the Service Commissions Department, Mr. Reginald Dumas, Mr. Stephen Kangal, Mr. Binley Benjamin, Ms. Dawn Glacier, Ms. Raquel Almondoz, Mr. Vanos James, Mr. Mervyn O'Neill, Mr. Reginald Phillips, Mr. Rodney Pigot, Mr. Clyde Weatherhead, Mr. Sean Ned, Mr. Rampasad Suraj, Dr. Petra Bridgemohan, and Ms. Carleen Phillips. All of these people and institutions put in written submissions on this matter of further internal self-government for Tobago. Those written submissions form the basis for a lot of the work of the committee, which is advanced. So when you hear people say there has been no consultation, understand what they're talking about. They might very well mean they didn't talk to me, or I don't agree with them, or I don't know what I'm talking about. What they cannot say is that the process, every institution I mentioned there, has some impact on Tobago, one way or the other, whether it's the Port Authority, the Service Commissions, whatever it is. And that work has been done. I am going back to Trinidad and Tobago to get this to the Parliament floor. And there's nothing that could assist in getting this into law more than you in this room pulling in the same direction on this matter.
Pulling in the same direction.
I'm going back to Trinidad, and I'm taking back with me that I've left you all here to deal with this period between now and when we get to the Parliament floor with the Joint Select Committee report. I trust that what I've gleaned from this morning is that you'd be able to come up with an arrangement to allow us to manage Tobago's affairs going forward in the next few months as a transition and interregnum, where there will be an assembly functioning, there will be an executive council, and there will be an assembly floor where the matters can be properly adjudicated and monitored. That will give us the breathing space and the respect. Because one of the problems we have is that the vast majority of people in the country, which is Trinidad, over 1 million people talking to 60,000 people, saying that we've given you responsibility. You have not demonstrated fully that you are able to cope with what you have. What are you asking for more for? And I'm not just talking about money. Understand? So you have to justify and demonstrate to the rest of the country that you are deserving of greater autonomy, greater respect, and putting in your hands and control greater resources of the country. Because if the rest of the country doesn't give it to you unless you're prepared to go independent by UDI, you're not going to get it. Understand? Unless you are prepared to declare independence, and I don't know what the reaction that's going to be, but I was not elected for Tobago and Trinidad to fall apart. So, and if you can't get the votes in the parliament to amend the constitution, to change the authority level from one to another, it's not going to happen. We'll just stay in Tobago and talk about internal self-government for another 40 years or more. So this is an opportunity that we are not to let pass. I will leave you to manage Tobago's affairs, and I will, for the time being, manage national affairs. I trust that I could count on your support on that particular issue. I'm not asking you to give up your party position or to give up your political opposition to the PNM or anything like that, because we operate in an environment of adversarial politics. When you hear this talk about the two sides must come together in the parliament, and that nonsense. Our system is one of, while you are there, I am to examine you and put a better proposal forward and make myself available in the event that a choice has to be made. And there's always a choice to be made. It doesn't mean that you have to be unreasonable or insulting. But our position is, you run your party, the PLM run the party, but when they say all politicians bad, you think they're leaving you out of it? Those who say all politicians did it for themselves. I see that, and sometimes it's hurtful to even read it, that politicians only get involved in politics for themselves. And when I think of how my children grew up without me, when I think about the days and weeks, I remember the closest member of my family, outside of my wife, was getting married and I missed the wedding because of politics in Trinidad. I couldn't leave the country. My daughter graduated in Barbados. I couldn't go to the graduation because I was involved in something political in the country. And then somebody come and tell me, I in this for myself. Understand? I've been there and you're starting out. I wish you all well. I want to hear when I go back to Trinidad, or even before I go back, because I'll be here until the weekend. I want to hear that you all would have met and you all would have taken a decision to run this island for the next few months together. And when you do that, I'm going to do all I could to try and bring that Joint Select Committee to a successful conclusion. And then, as I told you earlier on, once we do that, it involves going back to the polls, because the changes are going to be so fundamental that there are going to be at least two pieces of legislation to be amended, and one of which is the actual constitution of the country. And I hope that we get the support of the rest of the parliament so that that can be done. It would be a pity if we come so far and not get it done. So I want to thank you all again for coming, and I leave it up to you Thanks for coming. Right? Thank you all very much. Thank you.